Well, hello again and welcome back to Matthew North Music, and we are in my new shed and we're going to do a little project out here, and this is the first project in the shed. Since my last update video, I've just acquired this shelving unit, which is really great because it means all my components and everything now is all in one place, nice and neat and tidy out the way, just as I like it. But today we're going to open the contents of this box and we're going to hopefully build it and see what it sounds like. So let's get to it. Well, this package came from China. It took about 2 weeks to get here, and I also bought some other parts from the same website, which was wish.com, and I bought some LEDs from a different seller, but they actually arrived in the same package. So I'm guessing Wish and a lot of these other retailers overseas do have distribution centres in the UK, and they gather stuff together and then send it out in the cheapest way possible. Anyway, if we open up the box, we can have a look inside and see what we've got. Now, as you might have guessed from the title of this video, this is a pedal kit, and I haven't bought a pedal kit for a long time, not really since I started making my own. But this is a pedal with a history, and I thought I'd have a go at building this because I did actually buy one of these from I think it was from Wish actually, or AliExpress, one or two. And I bought the pedal and I tried it out. I didn't think much of it and I got rid of it. But I just thought I might give it another go and it'd be much more fun to build it. And here, inside here, we should see our pedal. So, bit of bubble wrap. And this is it. This is our Klon clone, as we can see here. Now, it's been relatively well finished. The print doesn't look too bad at all on the front. It's been lacquered, and yeah, it feels quite nice and smooth. I mean, this is a bog standard box. I can't remember the model number of these now, but you know, I've built loads of pedals in these type boxes. And we've got a 9-volt DC input, negative tip, positive on the outside, so standard as if it was a Boss pedal. Input and output jack. And then we'll have 3 controls here, an LED, and we'll have a foot switch. Now, I suspect that the kit parts are all going to be standard Chinese fare. And if you've been building pedals or seen any of my other pedal videos, you'll recognise some of the bits for sure. Anyhow, let's have a look at what we've got inside. I always find it's quite useful while checking things just to pop it all back in the cardboard box afterwards. But we've got our case. And again, the bottom of it's been painted and lacquered, and yeah, I think that does look pretty smart, to be fair. They do a silver one as well, which I did buy and then I cancelled it straight away once I found the gold one, because that looks a bit more Klon-like. And in our little box of parts, we have, well, there's our printed circuit board. Bog standard PCB, looks more or less the same as the one that was in the pedal that I bought. We've got 2 box jacks, just like the ones that I've been using on the Cosmo synth modules. We've got 3 knobs for the pots. Now this is very familiar if you've been watching my channel. This is the bog standard foot switch. We then have 4 screws for the case, so I'm going to pop that inside the case just so it's out the way. In fact, I'm going to put the case inside here just to keep it from getting scratched. We have 3 pots. Now these will be soldered to the PCB, and I will do that in a certain way. We have our LED and our LED holder. Interestingly, I think this LED holder might not be the right size. I'm not sure. I'm going to check that. Oh no, it does appear to be the right size. Yep, that is the right size. That's good. In fact, before I do anything else, so I don't lose this thing, I'm just going to pop it in there, because this is one of the things you can fit, because the LEDs on these units, they just push in, and you want to get it in at the right size anyway. So if I pop that in there and put that in place, and there's going to be a special way that we actually mount the hardware in this pedal, which I shall show you a bit later. And there's our actual LED itself. We then have some resistors here of various values. Now the values are actually written on the PCB. Now if we look at the PCB, you can see that all the part numbers are actually written on the board, so it's easy to identify bits to go in. Same with the things like capacitors, the polarity is all listed, the diodes, the direction is all listed, so it's all there, which is good. I'll pop that in there, and there's our resistors. We've got our DC connector here, which is just a bog standard Chinese DC connector. And we have a PP3 9-volt battery lead. Now, this wasn't with the original pedal that I had before. It didn't have one of these, it just ran on DC power, which is quite nice. And we then have a packet of other components. We've got in here we've got some electrolytic capacitors, diode. Well, the diodes look really funky actually. Yeah, they look really old as well. These look like old germanium diodes. I mean, they're not, and the legs are actually quite rusty, but yeah. We've got some IC holders, we've got other capacitors, there's another diode there, that might be a protection diode, but yeah, we've got everything in there that I think we're going to need. Again, we're going to have to cross-reference this with the PCB because there's no actual circuit diagram for this, so you have to be a bit careful. But it's nice that they give you IC holders so that you're not soldering the chip direct to the board, which I suspect manufactured ones would have. Now, we do have here a grub screw and a nut which has come off one of these pots. In fact, it's come off this one here. So if I pop that in there, and then I pop the grub screw in and give it a couple of turns. I haven't got a screwdriver to hand, but I'll just use the end of this knife. Probably not the safest thing to do, but it's in there now so it won't get lost. And we've got some hookup wire, and these various bits of hookup wire are for connecting the sockets, the foot switch, and all the other bits and bobs. Now, there doesn't appear to be any form of instruction to put this together. However, I would suspect that might well be documented on the internet, on the website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly look to see if there is any kind of layout diagram. If not, I'm just going to work it out. I mean, it shouldn't be too difficult because we basically have a load of pots, other bits and bobs, and they just fit in. The only thing that I don't know about is whether the switch, in fact no, it's labelled there, look, the switch is labelled there 1 to 6, so that's just going to be pins 1 to 6 on the foot switch, I would imagine. Anyhow, I couldn't find any circuit diagrams on the internet, but on the Wish sales page there's a load of photographs including things like the orientation of the ICs, and you can work out where all the wires go. And as I hinted on here, there's a row of wires here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they do indeed correspond with wires on the foot switch. So hopefully I will be able to populate this board and it should work. And today, the day I'm making this video, is the first proper day of Glastonbury. So I'm going to listen to a bit of Glastonbury on the radio, and I'm going to hopefully wire in every component on this board that I can, and then I'm going to show you how I fit all this into the case of the pedal, because it's a little bit fiddly, but not too fiddly, and it might just help out. So first thing, all the resistors, all the diodes, all the capacitors, IC sockets, everything that's mounted on this board, and then we'll get on to the slightly fiddlier stuff. Okay, well, it didn't take too long, but I got all the resistors in, and they were a little bit fiddly, and I couldn't always read the writing on the labels that were attached to the resistors. But if you have a digital multimeter like this, then you can use this to double check the values, because if you've got to take one of these out and move them around the board because you put the wrong one in, it can be a bit of a nuisance. But anyway, they're all in now, so I'm going to start populating the rest of the board now, but only after I've made a cup of tea. As is for traditional when it's Glastonbury festival time, it's chucking it down with rain outside, but I'm nice and warm in my little shed, and I've populated the whole printed circuit board. Now, there were a few components I wasn't 100% on the values, and having a magnifying glass really is useful if you're of a certain age, but everything's now populated, and now I'm going to put all the hookup wires on, and we're going to look at mounting it in the chassis of the case. I've wired up the foot switch. Now, this was I couldn't find which went to which easily, because one photograph it had the wires and they just used all the black wires, but I found another picture and it had it wired in this sequence, where if you look from left to right, it goes black, red, white, red, black. And then if we look at these in pairs, which I've kind of got them twisted around, but these three on this side, yeah, I've actually looped it around. In fact, I'm going to take this white wire off a second. Then we've got our set of wires on this side, and then I'm just going to pop it back on just because it looks a bit neater and looks a bit easier. Okay, so on this side here, it goes black, red, white, and then it goes black, red, white facing the other way, and they're kind of in the opposite direction. So that's how it's been laid out in the diagram, so I'm going to keep that as it is. Here's our box. We've got the DC power connector there, and we've got the LED here. Now, the LED has the longer leg on the left hand side and the shorter leg on the right hand side, because if we look at the circuit board, that side has got the earth going to it and this side's got the power. Now, we have 3 potentiometers that we need to fit to this board, and they sort of slot in here, and there's 2 of one sort and 2 of another. So we've got 2 10Ks and we've got 100K. Now, I've already sorted them out. I'm just going to take the nuts off these a second. So this one here that I've got, and these incidentally have 6 legs on them. It's almost like a sort of double gang pot, if you like. I don't know if it's because it needs them, or if it's more so because they're just cheaper. When I built my Cosmo synths, I found these type of potentiometers to be the only ones I could get hold of, and they were a lot cheaper. So that's why I bought them. Now, it's in place there, and I'm going to put the other 2s in, but I'm not going to solder them in yet, and there's a good reason for not soldering them in. And if you've ever built, pedals and effects units and things before, then you've probably got a good idea as to why. But interestingly, this one isn't a double, so maybe there is an electronic reason for that. I think I haven't really studied the circuit for this, so I'm not 100% sure what goes on, although it's quite an interesting circuit, because most overdrive pedals, they have a couple of diodes for the overdrive clipping bit of it, and this has actually got quite a few other diodes in it, so it's quite an interesting little thing. I'm just going to straighten that out. It's another thing with these kits, because they're sent over from China, you've got no idea really, how battered in transit these things have got. And yeah, like I said, these here, the pins are not straight, so I'm going to put that in place. If I can get it in there, it's cool. Let me just try with the pin side first. There we go. So we've got our potentiometers placed in, and I'm going to double check our LED. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring these wires around. Actually, I just realised I've put these on completely the wrong way around. They're actually supposed to go around on this side. So yeah, there's a a little silly thing that I did then. Although, as I said, if you always position things before you solder, then this mistake doesn't happen. I actually made this same mistake when I was building the one of the synthesizer modules for the Cosmo synth. So right, they are now correctly in the right position. That's our power wire, and all I've got to do now is line up the LED, which I might just take it out. Actually, I'll take it out because the legs have got a bit bent on this LED. I'm going to pop it in there, and hopefully I can poke that back in the hole with its retainer, which I can just, but I'm just going to pop screwdriver and just push that in place. There we go. Now then, if we get this into position, we now have, if you can see, we now have the board in position with the potentiometers. And then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm just going to loosely place the nuts on the pots. Not too tight, just keep them fairly loose so that there's a little bit of wriggle room. That one's just falling off. Put that on there. And that's it all in place. Now all we need to do now is we just need to solder all of those bits in, and hopefully they shouldn't move. And just check that the LED is still in place. Yes, it is. And if you do need to remove the circuit board, because I've positioned everything should just slot back into position, including the LED. The other thing I've got to do is I've then just got to screw that back into place, and then hook up the DC connector, wiring the output jack just because I just didn't do it, and well, fingers crossed everything should work. Everything's wired in now. Now I want to take you through a few things. When I talked about the DC inlet jack, it was wired in with the socket, if you like, facing the top. And what that meant was, when it's laid back like this, you've got this sort of side connector here, and then you've got a connector at the top and a connector on the right hand side. And the order of the wiring for these, which is quite important, is that the top on here goes to the far left connector. So it's like pin, if you imagine this is pin 1, pin 2, pin 3. Pin 1 goes to the side there. The middle one goes to the right hand side, so that's number 2 there. And then the bottom one, number 3, goes to the middle. So it's top, middle, bottom, because you need to get the polarity correct on that. The other thing is the output jack. Now, traditionally on effects pedals, the input jack is used for also connecting the negative end of the battery. But on this design, it's the output jack. Now, I'm sure if you were to swap the wire over to the input, it would do the same thing. But I'm keeping this to how it is. And again, you've got, if you imagine this is 1, 2, and 3, but this is all a little bit about face, really. And it's the middle one goes to the ground, or the sleeve, which is this connector on the corner. And then the tip, or the first connector, if you like, which is this one here, that actually goes to number 3. And what we call the ring, or the middle connector, is pin 1. So it goes tip, sleeve, ring. So it's all a bit about face. Now, the other thing you can see is the wires are actually quite long on here. Now, I would never normally keep the wires this long because of noise and just being in the way, but I just wanted to construct this as it comes out the box, so anyone that's going to have a go at building this kit can see what it looks like. But certainly I would recommend shortening the cables and rewiring them, and then it's just going to make a tidier job. Well, there we have it. That's the clone kit put together. When I was doing up my all the nuts and bolts and things, I did use these. I've shown you these before, but these plastic socket sets that you could buy, these really are great because you're never going to scratch the surface of anything that you do tightening things up. And I use 3 different sizes on this for the foot switch, the jack sockets and the pots. Now if you hear that, the battery does rattle around a bit inside, so I would suggest possibly maybe just using some of the packaging that came with the pedal. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to put the packaging inside just to stop it rattling around, because you don't really want that with a pedal. I mean, it's not ideal, but I don't want it to rattle. Yeah, that's good now. That's good. For our little sound test, then, I'm using my Champ that I built with a Shure SM58 just in front of it. For the comparison, then, I'm playing my Strat, and I'm playing the Squier Strat that has low sensor pickups on. So if we go for, say, the clean tone on the bridge pickup, we get this sort of sound. Okay, we're going to start the pedal with no gain at all, and I'm going to do everything based on the bridge position of the guitar, just so that you're getting it more about the pedal rather than the guitar. I'm now going to turn the gain up to about 9 o'clock. And I'm now going to turn the gain up a little bit more. And if we give it a little bit of treble now. Now I'm going to turn the gain up. I'm going to turn the gain up to about halfway, again with that little bit of treble. And then if I whack the gain up a little bit more, so we're now looking at about 2 o'clock. And then if we really whack the gain up now to, say, 3. And to me, that's a really nice crunchy sound. And I actually think, I mean, it could just be because I didn't really experiment with it before, but this pedal to me feels a lot nicer than the one that I bought before. Now we're going to whack it right up to full level. So this is the gain up full and the treble up full, and we start to hear a little bit of noise, but not that much. Now that's a lovely sounding overdrive, and yeah, there's a little bit of noise, but not as much as you get from other pedals actually, certainly with the gain flat out. Now we can of course turn the output level up, maybe bring the gain back a bit, so we're starting to drive the amp a lot more. And yeah, that does sound really nice. And I think with some delay added to it, you're going to get a really great lead tone. So in conclusion then, I'm very satisfied with this kit. Lack of instructions is not a good thing, But otherwise, it's a great pedal. I'm going to look forward to using this. It'll be Blues Jam night next week, and I'll take it with me. I'll probably play it through the Marshall and see what results we get. So let's do the maths on this pedal. This pedal was £26 and it was best part of a tenner shipping, so 36 quid. For that, you can buy one of these, you certainly buy one of these ready-made for 40 quid. But it's the fun and it's the satisfaction. And I enjoyed putting this together. It was a nice little kit. Lack of instructions was a big problem because obviously the kind of the pinouts and how they think things are numbered is a bit tricky. But because several retailers are selling these, I mean, you can buy these anywhere, Wish, AliExpress, Amazon, they're all over the place, these kits. By looking at not diagrams, more so photographs from other websites that are selling them, I worked things out. However, there are a few tutorials online, printed ones, where people have made these and they basically tell you the same sort of things that I've discovered building this. But it's a good little pedal. I really like the sound of it. And if you want to have a foray into making your own stuff, I'd say this is as good as anything really to sort of get you going. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say this is for an absolute novice. You've got to be fairly proficient at soldering because you do not want to get blobs of solder all over the printed circuit board. But otherwise, yeah, it's a good little pedal. It's a good bit of fun and I'm certainly going to enjoy using this. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. Great to be sat out in my new shed putting together a pedal because it was kind of my dream really. What would it be like to be looking out on a wet drizzly day out the window while you're actually making something? And that was the experience I got today, and that's why I bought the shed. So thanks for watching. See you on the next one.